There's a ritual I repeat almost every night. I open DistroWatch, I scroll the ranking, and I enjoy the show. Because let's be honest, it is a show. Hundreds of names, colorful logos, slogans promising the revolution, and 90% of that stuff, and I say this without malice but also without hypocrisy, are personal experiments. Customizations, often badly done ones, of distributions that have the real substance. Today I'm going to shock you. Today I'm not talking about the branches. I'm talking about the roots. The real Linux distributions, the ones that don't derive in any way, in absolutely any way, from another distribution. And I'll try to list them in order of importance. By history, by respectability, by structure and organization of the project. Because this is the point nobody wants to say out loud. I can build a distro from scratch tonight, I can give it a cool name, I can slap a dark theme and a logo on it, but if it's only me and my cousin using it, I can't sit at the same table as Debian. Being independent is a necessary condition, not a sufficient one. Substance is something else entirely. And pay attention, because this is not the usual video that talks about Debian, Void and Arch and then says goodbye. Those we name and we move on. The good part comes later. There are projects that will surprise you, that very few people know, and that are real Linux distributions, original, born from nothing. Let's start with the giants, the ones you all know. Slackware from 1993, the oldest one still alive, discipline turned into a system. Debian, the social contract, the most solid community organization in all of free software, the root that half the planet hangs from. Red Hat with Fedora, where there's $1 billion company and there's the upstream that RHEL, Rocky, and Alma are born from. SUSE and OpenSUSE, the European enterprise soul, with Zypper and Yast. Gen 2, compilation as a way of life, Portage, Total Control, and Arch Linux, Pac-Man, the rolling release, the bare base you build on yourself. These are the roots. Enormous projects and companies, rooted, organized, serious, structured. I won't dwell on these, you know them, and I've already made videos about them. Then there's the second circle, the pure independents, the ones that aren't the ancestors of big families, but were still born from scratch, with their own repositories and their own tools. Void with XPS and Runit, mine. NixOS with its declarative model. GNU GUIX fully free, scheme instead of configuration. Chimera Linux, the most fascinating of the new ones. Muzzle, userland taken from FreeBSD. No GNU core utils. Alpine, Muscle and BusyBox, by now the base of half the container world. Solace with its EOPKG and Puppy Linux. Up to here the list is known. I've already talked about it on the channel, and I won't repeat myself. There. Now the door closes behind us because it's these other ones that really interest me tonight. These deserve a serious deep dive, one by one. The history, the evolution, the curiosities. This is where the video becomes the video. Let's start with the hidden grandfather. CRUX. You remember Arch, the one you all know, Pac-Man, the simplicity, the minimal base? Good, Arch was born looking at this one. CRUX is a distribution created by the Swede Per Liden in the early 2000s, minimal, aimed at 64-bit, made for expert Linux users and for nobody else. The heart of it is a port system in BSD style, dead simple compilation recipes, no magic, no layers upon layers. Judd Vinet, the creator of Arch, used CRUX and loved its cleanliness, but he wanted a binary package manager, and so Pac-Man was born. So when you praise the philosophy of Arch, remember that a big part of that philosophy was born here, in a project that today almost nobody names. And CRUX is still alive, still true to itself. That is respectability. And now a story that reads like a novel. Source Mage and Lunar Linux, two sisters born from a drama. At the very start of the 2000s, a guy named Kyle Salih creates Sorcerer GNU Linux, a fully source-based distribution with a brilliant magical aesthetic. The packages are called spells. The package manager is called sorcery. The catalog is the grimoire, the book of spells. And to install a program, you cast that spell. Poetry so far. Then comes the drama, disagreements over how to run the project. And in 2002, a developer, Chuck Mead, creates a fork that will become Lunar Linux. Kyle, furious, one night pulls Sorcerer off the network and disappears, leaving the users with no updates, but the code was GPL. And here is the most beautiful lesson in free software you could ever tell. Thanks to the license, the remaining developers recover the sources from backups, put everything back together, and at Kyle's own request, they rename the project. Source Mage is born. Meanwhile, Kyle reappears, rewrites his code and releases it under an anti-fork license, which prevents exactly what had just happened. From a single project, 3 distributions. And source Mage and Lunar exists still today, source-based, alive, independent. The GPL literally saved them from a death decided by a single man. If this isn't a story worth telling, I don't know what is. Let's stay on source-based, but let's climb up a level of madness. Exherbo, born around 2008 from Brian Ostergaard, with contributions from developers who came out of the Gentoo and Paludis world. The package manager is called Paludis, the client is called Cave. Exherbo is not a distribution you try. It's a distribution you study. The documentation basically warns you that if you're not a serious Linux developer, you're not welcome. No installer, no comfort, a vertical learning curve. And let's be honest, it's not meant to be comfortable. It's an extreme gym, a laboratory for those who want to understand every single gear. It's independent, it's original, and it's proudly for the very few. And now pure genius. GoboLinux. Born in Brazil at the hands of Hisham Mohammed. And right here a piece of trivia that knocks you off your chair. Hisham Mohammed is the same man who created htop. Yes, that htop, the one you probably opened this morning. Well, that gentleman also made a distribution that had the courage to overturn a sacred dogma of Unix. GoboLinux redesigns the entire file system hierarchy. No more USR bin, etc., and lib folders scattered everywhere. Every program lives in its own directory, with its own version, in a way that is tidy and readable by a human being. Compatibility with the rest of the Unix world is handled through hidden symbolic links. It's a radical, almost academic experiment about how a system should be built, if only we had the courage to start over. And the fact that it exists and that it works is a lesson in lateral thinking. Let's come back down to earth, onto a solid and modern project. KaOS, born in 2013 at the hands of Anke Boersma from the Netherlands. And here's another piece of trivia I love. Anke trained horses for a living. She needed modern tools for her promotional work. She came to Linux, and she ended up building a distribution from scratch. KaOS is built entirely from scratch with a Linux from scratch style methodology. It uses Pacman as a tool, but it has completely its own repositories, and it has a surgical philosophy. One desktop environment, KDE Plasma. One toolkit, Qt. One architecture, 64-bit. No scattering, no compromises. And it is essentially the almost solitary work of one person who packages and releases with maniacal care, and who today is even migrating to an alternative init system, Dynit. Proof that focused can beat enormous. Let's move to the minimalists, to those who turn lightness into a religion. Tiny Core Linux. Born in 2008 from Robert Shingeldecker, who had been the lead developer of Damn Small Linux. The base version fits in a handful of megabytes. And the brilliant trick is that the system runs entirely in RAM. The applications are extensions you mount on the fly. It's almost unreal in its speed, because it doesn't touch the disk unless you ask it to. It's a masterpiece of subtractive engineering, and of course it's independent. And right next to it we'll place Puppy Linux by Barry Cowler from Australia from 2003. But here I have to be honest, because there's a fascinating nuance. Puppy in itself is an original system, the way it runs in layers, the way it lives in RAM, the way it's friendly on ancient hardware, that's all its own. But its build system, Woof, can assemble a Puppy, starting from the binary packages of another distribution. There's the Puppy made with Slackware packages, the one made with Ubuntu packages. So it's a wonderful edge case. The infrastructure and the soul are independent, but the flesh is sometimes borrowed. And it's right to say so, because precision is respect for the people listening. Now 2 distributions that put ethics before everything. Dragora GNU Linux Libre, created by the Argentinian Matias Fonzo. Fully free, the Linux Libre kernel, 0 proprietary software, built from scratch with its own package manager, today called Chi. It's small, it's stubborn, and it's one of those distributions where freedom isn't a marketing slogan, but a choice that costs you effort every single day. And then Adelie Linux, based on Muzzle, aimed at strict POSIX compatibility and at longevity on old architectures, even 32-bit and PowerPC, carried forward by a team with an almost non-profit calling. It shares some tools with Alpine, but it's developed independently, like a sister who took her own road, distributions that exist on principle, not for popularity. And now the part that throws you off the most. because I'm about to name an independent distribution that, statistically, is probably already running in your house and you don't know it. OpenWrt. It was born in 2004 out of an epic affair. Linksys was selling a very famous router, the WRT54G, and it was forced to release the source code of the firmware because it contained Linux and was covered by the GPL. From that liberated code, a community built a complete and writable Linux distribution for routers, the OPKG package manager, the UCI configuration, and today it runs on millions and millions of network devices all over the world. It's probably the most widespread independent distribution in this whole list, and it's the one nobody ever thinks to call a distribution. Once again, it's the GPL that turns a closed product into a common good. And right beside it, T2SDE deserves a mention, by René Rebe, the heir of the old rock Linux. It's not exactly a desktop distro, it's a build environment that compiles complete systems from source for an impressive number of architectures, from Spark to MIPS. It's pure infrastructure, and it's deeply respected in the embedded world. And finally, the tiny ones, the ones that close the circle and prove a precise point. And Copacabana Linux, based on Muzzle, with a heirloom userland focused on simplicity, modularity, and freedom. Tiny.niche, known to very few, but real, original, not derived. And they're the proof that independent doesn't mean famous, and that famous doesn't mean substantial. And here I close with a look at the future, because one of these is trying to rewrite the rules. AerynOS. Until a little while ago it was called Serpent OS, created by Ike Doherty, the same man who created Solus and the Budgie desktop. In 2025 it changed its name because, in his own words, who trusts a serpent, but the name is the least interesting detail. AerynOS is built entirely from scratch, with its own package manager called Most, written in Rust, and an atomic and stateless system model. Transactional updates, instant rollbacks, built-in file deduplication. In practice, it takes the best ideas of the immutable world and fuses them with the granularity of a classic package manager. It's still in alpha. It's a small project with all the fragilities of small projects, because maintaining a real distribution on your own is brutal work. But it's ambitious, it's original, and it looks 10 miles down the road. And it's the perfect reminder to end on. Building from scratch in 2025 is still possible. So the next time you scroll that ranking, ask yourself just one question. Is this thing I'm looking at a root or a branch? Because the branches are in the hundreds, they're colorful, they're loud, but the roots, the real ones, you can count on your fingers. And now you know them. But pay attention, and here I want to be honest all the way, because it would be too easy to close like that. Being original is one thing, but intercepting the real needs of users, having a vision, offering something that had never been offered before, is a very different thing. And then the picture gets more complicated, in the right way. Because there are derivatives that are little masterpieces, and this is a very rare thing, precious, that deserves respect as much as, and sometimes more than, certain independence. Think about what Ubuntu did to bring Linux to ordinary people. Think about Mint, about MX Linux, about Artix that pulls Arch out of systemd, about Divuan that kept an entire philosophy alive, about PC Linux OS. They're not roots, no, but their vision, their serious work, their projects that intercepted a need and gave it an answer. And alongside them, yes, there are also the historic mother distributions, the universally recognized projects, and then all the rest, the curious stories, the forgotten niche projects, the ones that are often just ends in themselves. This is why that ranking is better read with the right interpretive key. There are not 300 Linux distributions. There are many, many fewer, around 30 I'd say, maybe 40, if we throw in the big derivatives that actually matter, Ubuntu, Mint, MX Linux, Artix, Divuan, PC Linux OS, and a few others. All the rest is background noise. It's people who changed the wallpaper and added an icon, telling the noise from the substance, the roots from the visions, and the visions from the simple experiments. This is reading Linux like an adult. See you in the next video, and as always, may Linux be with you.